Hey there, welcome back. Hopefully yesterday's session helped a little bit. Maybe you're here because yesterday's session didn't help at all, and that it was a bit overwhelming. Diving into Xcode is a whole different beast than playing around in Swift Playgrounds, so it's totally natural to get a bit overwhelmed. And there's a lot of stuff there that you would be more familiar with if you start working with Xcode and start building apps. So if you've gone down that road already, maybe yesterday's session is the right one for you, and you'll use the Swift Playgrounds author template in Xcode to build your playground. Today we're going to go a slightly different route. We're going to show you the good old-fashioned way that most software gets written. We're going to copy what someone else has done, change it around a little bit, and relaunch it and see what our changes have wrought. So we'll check that out in just a second. We're also going to go around some of the guts of a Swift Playground and change a few things around. So we'll see how far we get anyway, and we'll have a bit of fun with it. So let's go take a look. All right, so we're here on the desktop. I have a few things set up for us so that we're ready to go. But before we do that, actually, let's start out where we most often see our Swift Playground. So we'll start off on our iPad. So here, we'll switch over here. Actually, we'll switch back to that. All right, so here we've got Swift Playgrounds on my iPad. I've got a few different playgrounds here, and maybe I've been inspired by one of these. I really like the way Spirals is done, or Learn to Code 2, or Lights Camera Code. And I want to copy one of those as the sort of the basis for my own Swift Playground. So let's go grab one of them. Anyway, maybe we'll grab Shapes is kind of modern. We'll pick that one. So what we're going to do actually is close out of that, and we're going to explore Shapes a little bit. So I'm going to hit the Select button here. I'm going to go tap on Shapes. And now I'm going to share this to my desktop. So I'm just going to airdrop it to my desktop. Nobody found nearby because I'm probably not on the same network. All right, maybe we won't airdrop it. So tell you what, this is a bit of a half-baked idea anyway, but basically that's how you would get your playground over to your Mac if you wanted to work on it, because it's usually a bit more comfortable to work on it on your desktop. So you would go off to, you do the same steps we just did. You'd select it, you'd go hit the share button, and you'd be able to mail it or airdrop it. In fact, let's complete the circle here. We don't have mail set up on this one. That's fine. So we'll go and we'll assume that we've shared that over. And in fact, I'll show you where to share and to extract playgrounds on your desktop as well. So let's go have a look at that. All right, so we're back on the desktop after that fun little interlude, and we'll just toss the iPad over there. All right, so we're going to be working in Playgrounds, so I'm going to open up my Playgrounds app. Here it is. We have a few different ones. We have our Shapes app, like we were just looking at on the iPad. What I can do if I want to take a look at that playground is I can right-click on it and choose to show it in the Finder. So we're going to show it in the Finder. It's going to pop up a window. Now it's on my iCloud Drive, and you can see I have a bunch of Playground books in here. In fact, we're going to hide Playgrounds for a second just so we can focus. And I'm going to actually copy this out. So I'm going to hold down the Option key and drag this out to my desktop so we can work on it over here. All right, so now we have our Playground book on our desktop. We can right-click on it and choose to show package contents. And just like we saw yesterday, we have our contents folder. We have our edits because I made some changes to the code. I actually added some code as I played it in the Playgrounds app. But contents is where we really want to focus. So in fact, I'm going to delete that edits folder altogether. Now I'm going to go back to contents. This is a bit like the old days of the web where we would just view source on the page, copy it, and then change things around and try it out and see what we can come up with. All right, so we can see we have a whole bunch of folders here. And again, I posted a link in yesterday's description. I'll post it again today to the Swift Playgrounds documentation. That'll tell you what all these folders do, what you can put in each, how you would use them, the structure of these manifest.plists that we're going to explore a little bit today. So, okay, so we have our book. We have some chapters. In fact, we just have the one chapter. We have a few pages. We have some private resources in each. It's localized, which is great. So it's written for each of these different languages here. We have some user modules. And there's one piece of code in there called sharedcode.swift that we're going to take a look at in just a second. But okay, so this is our shapes playground. How do we start to make this one our own? So if you've gone off and written a bunch of code that you think is going to be useful, there are a couple different ways we could do this. There are these new things called modules that we can add. There's a book module. We could actually add a module of our own that contains just a bunch of code that does a specific thing. But what we're going to do now is we're just going to kind of throw it in there just to get things working. So I have some code over here. So I have a series of playgrounds that let you work with turtle graphics, a little bit like Logo from back in the 70s and 80s. And I have them in a folder here, and it's just got a few files. If we look at the source code, we can actually hit space to open it up. We can see that we've got a UI view controller. We've got some stuff commented out. It's not the prettiest code, but it'll be usable by us in a Swift Playground. So what I'm going to do is I want to use this code in my playground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually copy it into this My Files playground module. I'm going to copy it into the sources. So I'm just going to select all of these. I'm going to hold down the Option key to copy them. So I don't want to move them. And I'll copy them in there. So now if I open up this playground book by double clicking it, it's going to ask me if I want to open this. And we can see our canvas, our shared code. That's that shared code.swift file we saw. If I'm on the desktop and I hit the show sidebar, I'll see that I have some additional things in the My Files area. Now the other way we could have done this is we could have actually just opened up the playground and hit the plus button to add new files here. And we could have written our code that way. But now we can see I have my turtle view class, my turtle view controller. And it's nice, it's highlighted the way you'd expect source code to be highlighted instead of looking at it in Finder. So now I should be able to use this stuff. So okay, this is cool, we're looking good. I'm actually gonna close this down so I can open it again and it'll refresh for me. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into, the turtle code, I'm done with that. I've copied that over. I'm going to go back to my chapters and we're going to change that very first page. So go to Shapes, go to Pages, and we were on canvas.playground page. So we had a main.swift. And for this one, we don't have a live view, so let's play around with that for a little bit. Okay, so in main.swift, what we're going to do is I've got some code here that will help me add my turtle to my screen. So I'm going to actually double click this so I can open it up in Xcode. Now again, while we're waiting for Xcode to start up, if you have questions or comments, or you're wondering how you're going to make your Swift Student Challenge ready for Sunday, which is the deadline, feel free to drop them in the comments and I'll try to address them as we go. Like I said yesterday, Sunday is a really tight deadline. If you haven't started yet, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself for Sunday. Doable, but it's going to be a lot of work. So You could take the pressure off yourself by saying, do you know what? I'm going to work as hard as I can for Sunday, get as much as I can done, and really aim to have this ready for next year. So when they announce WWDC 2022, you'll be ready, because that deadline will be coming up in a week or 2 weeks after the announcement, and you'll say, oh, actually, cool, I've been working on my Swift Student Challenge all year round. So maybe this isn't for this year, maybe it's for next year, but this is just to give you an idea of how to get around Swift Playgrounds. All right, so let's try double clicking that again, get our main.swift open. Here we go. Okay, so you can see some things in here like our hidden code. This stuff doesn't show up when we look at it in Swift Playgrounds. And we have some code completions that are really useful, because that's what gives us those prompts when we start typing. We'll get some hints about what type of code we can write there. We hide this setup code. And this is the part that's visible, and this is the editable code that we can actually change ourselves. So we don't really need any of that stuff, because we're not going to do anything with shapes in this one. I've added my turtle stuff, so that's what I want to do. So let's go and add some code that I've got there. All right, so what this does is this, and we'll have to import Playground support. And I think that should be good for us. So what this does here is it creates this turtle view controller class, an instance of it. We create an instance of a turtle. We can give it a name and an avatar. Normally the avatar is an emoji of a monkey. And then we can call some commands on our turtle. So we can tell it to go forward 20 pixels. And then we even use a loop here. So for 10 times, we're going to make that turtle go forward 50 and then turn 36 degrees. Once we're done with all of that, and we've given the turtle a set of commands to run, we add the turtle to the view controller that knows, okay, cool, now I know how to draw it on the screen. And then we assign it to the live view. So that's the thing that shows up over on the right-hand side. So this is just some code that I've written that I'm like, oh, this is my Swift Student Challenge. This is what I want to have work. And the reason why this is going to work is because I've dragged in this code I've already written into my user modules, and we should be good to go from there. All right, so let's close that. Let's open up our shapes again. You can see I've got that code that I just wrote. We can hit run my code now. And we wait a little bit. We can see that some of the code's been run. And there we go. So over here in my live view, this is actually an instance of a turtle view controller. And we told that turtle to run a certain set of commands. We could add other commands in there. But now I've taken the shapes playground that was designed to do one specific thing, and I've added my own code to it so that we could actually get a different result out of it and show off the work that I've put in. So that's one way you could copy a playground book from someone else, and Shapes comes from Apple. It's one of the built-in examples that you can download. And it's a really great example, really fun to play around with the shapes and make them draggable so you can drag them around the screen. And we've added our own code in there just to show it off for the Swift Student Challenge. Now this probably would not win the Swift Student Challenge, just a turtle drawing mechanism in Swift Playgrounds. Okay, so that's one way. So I've written some code that has a view controller and it draws views and all that other kind of fun stuff that I can create my own experience over here in the live view. And it's much simpler because I'm starting from a different base. You know, I've already got a playground that I kind of liked. You know, ideally I wouldn't just throw away all the stuff from our shapes playground. Ideally I'd be building on it. I'd be using some of that stuff. In fact, we have a really good playground that's built on some of the other playgrounds from Apple. If you look, and I'll include this link in the description, the Sonic Workshop, let's see, what's the other one? Sonic Workshop and the Lights Camera Code that's available on the iPad. Those are excellent playgrounds from Apple that show you how to build an app-like experience on the iPad. It's pretty phenomenal. We took that for our series last year with the Code Hub, and we built an app at home playground. Now that takes a lot of the same infrastructure. So we have a space that we can add different elements to, like buttons or labels. And it's a way of building up an app that you can make it a game or make it some other kind of interactive experience. Those might be good starting points to start from. In fact, it mentions here the Camera Create starting point. So that might be one that you copy. So we'll give you a link anyway to our Swift Playground feed, which has a few of these, including the Turtle Graphics code and everything. And you'll have access to all that code that I just showed you and just dragged in myself. All right, so that's one way you can do it. You find a playground somewhere in here. Now we have other playgrounds from other teachers. We have some great playgrounds from Italy, from Spain, from Australia, where people have done a lot of work to make these really engaging experiences. Again, don't be alarmed by the alarm dogs. They're just telling you that the deadline's coming up soon. So there's loads of different playgrounds that you can go check out and try to figure out what might work for you and what might suit your experience best. Now, that's one way to approach it, because those will give you a way into drawing stuff on that live view. That's kind of our ultimate goal with a lot of these, is we want to have something show up for the user. So the other thing I'll show you today is I've got two other playgrounds, again, that we'll try to publish over the next couple of days, probably not for Sunday, to our own playground feed, where we have an example of using SwiftUI, which is the new hotness for drawing user interface, and using it inside your Swift Playground. And then we'll show you another one where we animate a view using UIKit and UIView, the old standard. And I'll show you how to customize that a little bit. All right. So let's have a quick look. So we have our SwiftUI example here. Again, this is the new hotness. I'm not going to go into SwiftUI a lot here, but it'll just show you an example of how to get a live view being drawn by SwiftUI in your playground. So here we go. We have our playground. You saw that it had a nice icon that made it stand out, and that's what we're going to show you how to address when we get to our UI view playground. You can see there's not a lot of code here. We've imported SwiftUI because that's the interface paradigm we're going to use. And we've also imported playground support because that's what we need to be able to set that current page's live view. So to use SwiftUI, you create a content view. It's of type view. And basically the only condition that we have to satisfy here is that we have a computed property called body. Again, if this stuff is all sounding like Greek to you, don't worry about it. We'll post a version of this that you can download yourself and play around with, because that's maybe the best way that you're going to be able to learn this stuff. Roughly, what it means is that as opposed to yesterday where we dragged and dropped lots of elements out onto the screen with Interface Builder inside Xcode, we're going to write a lot of our UI in code. So we have this thing called a V-stack, which is a vertical stack, so we'll have items going down the screen like this. We've got a text element for our first. It's going to say, welcome to SwiftUI and Playgrounds. We can give it a certain font. We have a H-stack, which is going to align things horizontally. And we have a bit of logic here that says, okay, cool, well, we have this pressed count property, that's going to change. And if it's equal to 1, we'll say it's pressed 1 time. Otherwise, we're going to say, we're going to insert a text element that says pressed however many times we press the button. Because down here we have our button next. The next thing after that H stack, the next element down in our V stack, our vertical stack, it's going to be a button that says press. It's going to have a foreground color of blue, padding of 12. We've got some other things like background color set, corner radiuses, and padding. And then once we're done with that, once we've defined our content view, so everything between these curly braces is our content view, we just create an instance of it and assign it to the live view for Swift Playgrounds. So if I run my code, I can see that I've got, it says, just like we kind of expected above, welcome to SwiftUI and Playgrounds. We've got a button with a yellow background, a blue border, with some cool corner radius action going on. And if we press it, our text shows up. In fact, we get a little notice here that this has been run so many times. It's been pressed 1 time, press again, press 2 times. So we have an interactive app already with very little code in SwiftUI in our Playgrounds. So if you've come up with something kind of cool and interesting in SwiftUI, and there's some great tutorials that Apple have produced on SwiftUI and how to use it, maybe this is what you wind up submitting as your Swift Student Challenge. All right, so that's our SwiftUI experiment. And if we go have a look, I can right click on this guy. I'm going to show it in the Finder. There it is there. And I'm going to show package contents so we can look inside. You can see we've got our edits again, because I changed a few things as I was typing there. We can dive down into chapters, pages. We'll open up my playground page. That's got nothing in it. In fact, I think I've pasted this all into the playground. So I think it's all in our edits. That's where all of this exists. But the cool thing is we have this nice icon here, so it really stands out. So how did we do that? Well, we added a thing in this folder called private resources, because that's where we keep all of our images and other resources related to our Swift Playground. We had to go design it ourselves. But that's what we did. We created a PNG image. And then what we did was we added it. We went into the manifest.plist. We added a key called image reference. And we just gave it that name. So the image reference, when Swift Playgrounds finds an image reference key in your top level manifest.plist, it'll go digging around in that private resources folder for an image named that. Now, if it didn't exist there, it would show us the default generic icon like this one for our Swift Playground. And we'd have to go hunting around to make sure that this file here existed in our private resources folder and that we hadn't put it in the wrong place or anything. So let's do that. Let's add that for our UI View Playground. First, let's take a look at the code in our UI View Playground. We'll kind of look and see what it's doing and see how we can build up a user experience that way. And then we'll go and give it a nice new icon. So let me close that one. This is our SwiftUI Playground example. Again, maybe I'll make it downloadable from the codehub.ie a little bit later today, and then we'll add it to our Playground feed at some point. But if I double click my UI View Playground, we can see we've got a little bit more code here. Again, so we've imported Playground support. Again, that is to be able to assign the live view to a specific view. We've also imported UIKit. So instead of importing SwiftUI, this time we imported UIKit. So the very first thing we did, because we're using UIKit, we created a UI view, which is basically just a rectangle. And that's what we defined for that frame. So we say it starts at an origin of X is 0 and Y is 0. And it's going to have a width of 500 and a height of 500. We set the background color to white. In fact, we can tap on this and change it. We have this wave image, which is just a photo we took. So we took a screenshot of the surfer guy emoji and saved it inside here. And we're going to show you where that is in just a second. And then what we did was we flipped it around. So he's facing this way. I actually wanted him facing the other way for the benefit of this demo. So we called this method on UI image called with horizontally flipped orientation. It just gives me a copy of the image flipped. And then we created a UI image view with that image. And just like we did for our view, our enclosing view, we set the frame of our wave view. So we wanted to make it a certain size. And that was here. So we gave it an origin of 250, so it's down the screen a bit. It doesn't start at 0 and 0, but it's going to be pinned to that left side. And it's going to have a width of 100 and a height of 100. So it's much smaller than the enclosing view. And then we added our image view, our cool surfer guy, to the overall view. So the overall view is just that big white square that's 500 by 500. And once we were done with that, in fact, let's comment this out and we'll show you what it looks like just to start. We'll run our code. That's what it looks like. So that's 250 pixels down. This is our UI view. Now it's filling up the whole live view. And in fact, we can kind of see, instead of making it white, maybe we'll make it yellow. Maybe that's not a great choice for the C, but we'll try it out. We can see that our UI view has been stretched a little bit. So maybe it's not 100% what we expected. So maybe we have to play around with that a little bit. So let's change it back to white anyway, because we're kind of okay with it. In this case, it doesn't matter. We're just going to watch what our animation does. And the point of this playground is to show you, one, that you can create a UI view from scratch and UIKit elements from scratch and add them to a live view in the Swift Playground. And then also that you can do cool things like animate them. So there's a fun method on UI view. Oops, it would help if I didn't delete that. Called UI view animate. And you give it a time. So we said with duration, so over the course of 3 seconds, we should change the frame from where it is now to the new frame. And the only difference between these two frames is that the X coordinate is going to be 500. So instead of being 0 over here, it's going to be 500. The Y axis, the Y coordinate is going to stay the same. The width and the height are going to stay the same. But our surfer guy's got to move across the screen. So let's try running our code now that we've made those changes. And we got a kind of fun animation where our surfer goes off the screen. Now we can make it look like he's surfing off into the sunset and make the size go smaller, change the size of the frame. And there are lots of other properties that we can animate on our view. But that's all we're going to do today, because what we're going to focus on now is customizing that icon and customizing this playground itself a little bit more. So I'm going to drag it over here. In fact, I'm going to close that. Now I want to make this look just as snazzy as this. I want to make a very clear that this is a SwiftUI playground. It's got that SwiftUI logo. I want to make sure that we have a UIKit looking logo for our UI View playground. And luckily, I've already designed one. I've got this UIKit playground icon here. So we're going to use that. So what I'll do is I'll show this in the Finder. And again, these are the same steps that we followed for earlier when we shared a playground and we were just monkeying around with it, trying to create our own copy. So I've got my UI View playground. I'm actually going to Option drag this to the desktop, so I create a copy on my desktop. And I'll close that down. I don't need that anymore. Don't need that, and I also don't need that. Now I'm going to right click and show package contents because we're going to go rooting around in there. Now I'm just looking around in the Finder. I'm just double clicking individual files. Another thing you could do is actually open this with Xcode. So you don't get the option here. But we could go down to the bottom and say, actually, I want, let's make sure, yep, we'll grab Xcode. We'll have Xcode open up this file. So if you are familiar with Xcode, this will be a great way to navigate around. And if you're not, this might be a way for you to practice getting around the file. Okay, so when I open it with Xcode, I get something that looks like this, which is not super useful. So what I need to do is I need to show the project navigator that we saw yesterday. Now, one way I can do that is by hitting Command 1, or I can go up to View, Navigators, Project. And now this looks a little more interesting because now we can open that up. We see our edits folder, which is not super useful. We can open this up. We can see that in my edits, this is where I added my photo 1, so that surfer guy. We could have also added that to our private resources here, and it would show up when we tapped on the image icon. And now what we're trying to do is we're going to add an icon so that this stands out a bit. Now we have a few other notes here with the content identifier. We probably want to change that because it's not going to be com.apple anymore. It's going to be our own creation. But all the other stuff looks fine. The Swift version, the other version, the user module mode. We'll wait a second while Xcode has to think about it. And if it takes too long to have to think about it, we'll just show you the other way. In the meantime, if there are any questions, feel free to shoot them in. Again, drop me a note through YouTube or on the codehub.ie. All right, now we're back. So we're going to add an image reference key value pair. So it's all one word, and it's camel case. So if you're familiar with that from maybe constants, variables, and data types, you might remember camel case is we don't have spaces in the words, we just capitalize the first letter of each word. Now I need to copy this icon in here because I can't just refer to it. I can't just say UIKit, make sure I spell it right, playground icon.png. It won't just find it wherever it is on my desktop. I have to copy it into this folder here. So what I'll do is I don't have a private resources folder, but I can just create that. I'm in the Finder now. created private resources, and I'm going to option drag this over, so I drag over a copy. I can also go have a look at my source code in here. Xcode might be thinking about it because the file system changed underneath it. But while we're waiting for Xcode to sort itself out, let's try opening up this UI view playground book and adding it to our playgrounds here. There we go, Xcode is caught up. There's our playground. We haven't added any new code or anything. There's our animation running. In fact, tell you what, I'm gonna leave Xcode just to give the poor machine a little bit of a break. And now that we've made those changes, so I can't see the icon here, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy it back. I'm going to copy it over this one. So let's go back to Show and Finder. The one that I've changed is this one here on the desktop. So I'm going to drag that back in. I'm going to option drag it so I create a copy. It's going to tell me there's already something there named PlaygroundBook, so I'm going to actually just replace it, because the only change I made was the icon. And now I had a little arrow saying that it's got to be uploaded to iCloud Drive, because I changed it here on my Mac. But my icon still didn't come up. So what I could do is I could hit duplicate playground, and now we can see our cool icon. So it just needed to sort of tickle Swift Playgrounds to get it to read that file again. Now I can leave this here, and at some point that'll get updated to the new icon. It'll reread the manifest.plist, and it'll say, oh cool, you have a reference to a new image reference. That's what I'll use to draw the picture when I show the big list of all the playgrounds. So now, and I'll get rid of this, so we'll just delete that. Now we can see very clearly that, okay, cool, this is my older UI view version of the playground, and this one over here is my SwiftUI playground, just based on the icons. So that's what you could do when you're getting down to starting to customize your own playground book a little bit, especially if you went and borrowed the structure off of one of the other pre-existing templates. So hopefully this has been kind of helpful. I think that's all we had for our demo today. It's a bit of a seat of the pants type of demo. There wasn't a lot of prep to win in this, as you might have been able to tell. So one thing I would really encourage you to do, especially before Sunday, if you are planning on rushing something out for Sunday, I would go have a look at some of these playgrounds that are available. Now on the iPad there are a lot more available, because you have access to the camera. You can do cool augmented reality stuff that we can't do in playgrounds on the Mac. So go have a look, play around with some of these. Take a look at one of my favorites is Cypher. That kind of tells a bit of a story where you have to crack some codes to get to the next part of the story. But go have a look. Sonic Workshop is really well done, and it does help you build an app. If you're interested in playing around with that stuff more, we always have our video series from last year where we did build an app at home after we worked through all of the Learn to Code 1 and Learn to Code 2 material. And the app at home playground is a really good place to start. So I'll put a link to the My Playground feed in the description. I'll also put a link to a page that we have on the Code Hub where we have a collection of a few of these, including the Swift Teacher collaboration, which is brilliant, and some of the other playgrounds available here. So I hope you've enjoyed today. Again, best of luck when it comes to the Swift Student Challenge. I'm really excited for you. I think the the level of quality that comes out of the students is just phenomenal, and I'm always blown away by their contributions. Playgrounds is a whole interesting beast that's much different than app development and even the everyone can code material that you might have worked through. So take some time to read a lot of the documentations. Go off to the developer app. If you're on a Mac, I can't recommend it enough. You can download it here and search through old sessions. If you go to WWDC or if you go to the search field, you can search for Swift Playgrounds and you'll find a whole bunch of material about Swift Playgrounds through the years. The Swan's Quest series was really fun, and we talked about it a little bit last year. It also talks about building a SwiftUI view in Swift Playgrounds. So go check it out. You've got links off to the forums where people can discuss this kind of stuff. We've got transcripts. We've got code that's written in here as well. That's highlighted during the video while they're typing it out. You can kind of see what code they're working on. And you can see here we do some really cool stuff. They've got some animation. They've got some progress, a little progress bar that they draw. Really, really well done. Really great stuff. So again, all these links will be in the description below. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, like and subscribe, and we'll see you again soon.